Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
Pint Glass Football, NFL, and college football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. What's up, PGF Nation? The NFL draft is over, but we still have some more team draft grades to get through. And today, it's the NFC East and the AFC East. We're going to tell you the picks that we liked and didn't like for each team in these divisions. And, of course, grade each team. And joining me, like always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Finally dwindling down and getting to all of these teams. A lot to talk about, especially with that NFC East. A lot of draft picks to get into.
Man, absolutely, Alex. Let's not waste any time here because, like you said, we're doing a double episode, so to speak, today. Going to get through a lot of teams and give you guys our takes on these players. Some interesting drafts here, Alex. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys, of course, America's team. Going into this draft, Alex, I had written down that their biggest needs were at the offensive line, running back, and linebacker because they lost several key starters at different positions this offseason. They had some holes to fill, Alex, and this was a really important draft for the Cowboys because of it. The Cowboys traded back 5 spots in the first round. They added an extra third rounder. I thought that was a good move, but then they went and drafted Tyler Guyton, the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Look, this guy is a really good athlete. He's got quick feet. He's better in pass protection than he is in the run game, and he's more of a project player than a true plug-and-play starter, which I think, unfortunately for Dallas, they're going to be forced to play him year one, and I'm not sure that's going to be a great fit. He's also going to have to move from right tackle to left tackle, which isn't always easy, especially for rookies. For you guys that have been following our exclusive content on YouTube, we've talked a lot about this guy. We aren't the biggest fans of this player. Yes, he's got upside, but he's also got some big question marks.
Brad, one of my biggest picks to not, really be a good pick in this draft was Tyler Guyton. Had a bad combine, did not work at the pro day. Something is there. I actually had him pushed down, thinking it would come out during the draft, but not a good pick for me at all.
Yeah, I think down the road, 2 or 3 years from now, it could become a good player. But like I said, they're going to need him to be a good player year one. I'm not sure that's going to be a great fit for them. Now, with the 56th overall pick, the Cowboys went to the defensive line, took edge defender Marshawn Kneeland out of Western Michigan. And Kneeland is a guy we haven't had a chance to talk about, Alex, on this podcast yet. Really strong against the run. Has a nice mix of pass rush moves. Dallas needed to improve against the run. And this pick should certainly help because this guy is a really strong run defender.
Yeah, and you know what? The key thing is here as well. I love to always look at the contract and what's going on. DeMarcus Lawrence is coming up on a year where he can possibly be cut. 32 years old, will be 33 when the season ends, and he will be a perhaps cap casualty at the end of the year, and this guy can move right into the starting role.
In the third round, Alex, they go back to the offensive line. They take Cooper Beebe, a guy that has the ability, I think, to start and maybe play a significant role for the Cowboys as a rookie. Here's the bottom line. He was one of the best guards in college football the past 2 seasons, but I wouldn't be surprised, Alex, if Dallas looks to actually move him to center where they're going to need more help.
Yeah, solid interior offensive lineman. We know that they lost their center to the Washington Commanders, but we knew that they needed to address the offensive line, specifically going into these contract years that they have with these 3 other players, namely CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott, as well as Micah Parsons. So we knew that they needed to start to address some things because what was their strength is now their weakness, and that's the offensive line.
Yeah, I like that Dallas attacked the offensive line and defensive line early in this draft. I think it was important, and they knew it. And I think they did a pretty good job from that standpoint. Now, another pick that I like for Dallas is 5th-round pick, cornerback Kalen Carson out of Wake Forest. Another guy we haven't had a chance to talk about, Alex, but he was a 4-year starter at Wake Forest. A lot of big game experience. He's a physical corner, and he's also really good versus the run. I think he could end up being a steal in the 5th round.
Yeah, I like him a lot. You know, they lost Stephon Gilmore this year. Deron Bland popped out as another guy. And the Cowboys have done one specific thing since the Sun has been taken over with the other GM, that they have really done a lot of great scouting and drafted great in the mid rounds, which is where they make their money. I do want to back up for 1 second. The second, third round pick and Maris Lafau, I thought they should have taken a running back there because that's one of the things they did not do. And Marshawn Lloyd was available for them, and I think they may have messed up there because they could have had a really good running back in that starting lineup.
That is a great point, Alex. And I pointed out at the start of this that running back was a key position in need for them. So I don't love that they didn't address it. And a guy like him on the board, it's a great point by you. I think I like this draft overall for Dallas, though, Alex. I don't like that they waited so long to address the linebacker position. That was another position that I think they needed to hit on in this draft. And like you mentioned, they didn't draft a running back at all in this entire draft. So they did a nice job filling some obvious holes on this roster, especially at the line of scrimmage. But I'm just not sure how big of an impact Guyton makes year one. So because of that and how much weight we put on the early picks, I'm going to have to go with a B- grade for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and agree with that as well. And just giving them a lot of credence to what they've done over the past few years in the mid rounds, I'm going to just maintain it at a B- because it could be a C, but I'm going to lean on what they've done in the past in those mid rounds because they've been very good at their selections. On to the Eagles, the nemesis for the Cowboys. They've been flip-flopping at the top of this division every other year with a sprinkle of Washington in there. I have to say, the way things fell, and you could tell if you're watching the telecast of what was going on with CJ Stroud and Micah Parsons, how upset Micah Parsons was in the first round when the Eagles stepped up to the microphone and with the 22nd pick, the best DB rated in the draft, Quinyon Mitchell, was there. And that to me was one of their, if not their biggest need here, given the fact that they did not have that upfront line doing what it did the previous year with the 70 sacks. On the back end with Slay and Bradbury, they got exposed. So what do? You address it immediately in Quinyon Mitchell, the best DB in the draft.
Yeah, how in the world did this guy fall to the 22nd pick? The best cornerback in this draft, like you mentioned, Alex. And I don't think personally it was close. I love this kid's game. I thought he'd be a top 12, top 15 pick at worst. For him to fall to 22 is crazy and just unbelievable value for the Eagles to not only get this guy, I think he was the second best defender in this draft as well on my rankings. And now you have a plug and play starter at a key position of need.
To then add insult to what they did in the first round, they went back to the well again and drafted Cooper DeJean, who fell to the second round. A guy that I think he's very versatile, can be very versatile in this offense. I think you could put him at safety. He can play the edge. And I think in certain situations, he would actually even be able to play the slot at times. But another versatile piece that you have in there, you have, again, they're going to move on from Bradbury at some point. They're actually going to move on from Slay, who turns 34, perhaps 35 during this season. And they're already set up with their number 1 and number 2 on the gate again as they move into the future with this team.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. Cooper DeJean, a guy that falls to the 40th pick. A lot of people thought that he could be a late first round guy. So another just tremendous value pick, whether it's at safety or at corner. I think you're right, Alex. He's going to add some serious juice to that secondary, regardless of where you line him up. And I do think he can play in the nickel as well. He's such a good athlete. He's got great instincts, great ball skills. No matter where you end up playing him, I think he's going to add tremendous value year one.
Now, here's where we're going to get into where I have a few questions, and I'm just going to talk about the third round and the fourth round together. Jalix Hunt out of Houston Christian. Who? Hard to find tape on him, but a third round pick with the 31st pick overall. I was completely baffled by that. Sometimes I think GMs can outsmart themselves, but hey, we're just reacting to the actual pick. And then Will Shipley in the fourth. Now, I think Will Shipley is a good back. However, I just had a better grade with Isaac Arundo from Louisville. He can do some of the similar things that Will Shipley can do. He's a bigger back because he can also catch out of the backfield. And with what I think they're going to be able to do with Saquon Barkley, I just thought Garundo was a better prospect than Will Shipley in those two situations.
Yeah, I think with Hunt, big upside guy, more of a traits guy, definitely higher than I would have thought he would go in this draft. Will Shipley is a really solid player, really productive player, 1,200 all-purpose yards each of the past 3 seasons at Clemson. So a guy that really has shown a lot on tape. Maybe he's a third down back. At the very worst, I think he adds some depth to the running back room, but I'm with you. I think there were some other running backs there that maybe would have been a better pick, but I don't hate it.
Right. And then the rest of their picks seem to just really be just filling out the roster. Wide receiver, Anaya Smith out of A&M. And then I don't want to say a hometown pick, but a home team pick for his father, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. out of Clemson, who I think is a thumper, but a little bit undersized. I love the pick of Trevor Keegan. That Michigan O-line, I'm pretty solid with anybody. If you can get that guy in the 5th round. I will say a guy that we did forget in terms of talking about in terms of value, Johnny Wilson, the 6'7" receiver out of Florida State, who I believe is Jimmy Graham in this league. Getting him in the 6th round, I think is great value. And I think they're actually going to be able to use him often and early, especially in goal line situations when they can use 12 personnel across the board with Goddard as well as Johnny Wilson on the field, along with A.J. Brown as well as the other wide receiver. I think that's great value there at the 6th round.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Smith, wide receiver out of Texas A&M, that's a really solid pick where they got him. I actually thought he might go a little earlier than that. I know you loved Jeremiah Trotter. Going into the college football season, he was a guy that I know you were texting me about, circling his name as a player to watch, and of course a legacy pick going to the Eagles there. I think he could actually be a pretty good player in the league. Trevor Keegan, getting a guard there, a solid player out of Michigan, nice value in the 5th. Johnny Wilson, the wide receiver, big-bodied wide receiver. I like your comp there for him as a Jimmy Graham type of receiving threat. I think that's a really interesting pick there in the 6th and really good value. This is another draft, Alex, where the Eagles stuck to their board and found value at several different spots. What grade do you have for these guys?
I have them at an A-. It probably would have been an A just simply because I just thought of in that middle round, I thought they could have done a few different things, but it's just an A- at this point. But again, Howie does it once again.
Yeah, absolutely. 1st and 2nd round picks are home runs. I think I'm with you. Their 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks maybe don't have as much spark to those as you'd like, but all in all, they found value throughout this draft. I'm with you. I like the A- grade. Alex, let's move on to the Washington Commanders. This was a really interesting draft. They had a ton of draft picks. Going into this, I had their biggest needs circled at the quarterback position, offensive line, and cornerback. Obviously, they took care of the quarterback position right away with the number 2 pick in the draft. Washington had its choice of Jaden Daniels or Drake May. We've talked a lot about Jaden Daniels on other episodes, what we like, what we don't like about his game. So if you want, go back and listen. If you want to hear more in-depth breakdowns of his game and why he was on our list of the riskiest players in this draft, I think it's safe to say Alex and I aren't as high on him as a lot of other people, but obviously a skilled player. And I think Daniels, I think when you compare him to a guy like Drake May, he might be a little more NFL ready year 1, but I just don't think he has the upside of a Drake May, and that's why we both had him higher in our rankings. But I do think his style of play, I think, should work well with Cliff Kingsbury's spread offense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like you said, we have our holdups with him or a little bit of things that we don't like about it, but somebody's going to bring some excitement to that team, new ownership. You're going to be building a new stadium soon. Somebody that's going to pack the building with his exciting play.
Now, Washington had 3 second-round picks, and they took Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois, with pick 36 overall. I had a first-round grade for Newton, big-time pass rusher. He had over 100 quarterback pressures the past 2 years. He needs to improve as a run defender, but really good player. Only problem I have with this pick, Alex, is that this wasn't a need for Washington. If you look at that Washington Commanders team, you can make a strong case that the best part of this team is that interior of the defensive line.
Yeah, but you know what I always do? I go back and I take a look at that contracts and what's going on, and it's spelling to me the end of Jonathan Allen at this point. They have a lot of their money tied up between the two defensive tackles, and I think at this point, what it's telling me is that Jonathan Allen is going to be on the out, and they're replacing him with Johnny Newton, and why they made that pick.
Now, the next second round pick, they took Mike Sanderstill, cornerback from Michigan. Now, this pick was awesome because this is a guy that we both really like in this draft. Hands down, the best nickel corner in this draft. Great player, great pick for Washington. He has ball skills. He can pick off passes. He had 6 interceptions in 2023. He can blitz the quarterback from the edge. He's tough. He's quick, and he's great in run support.
Quintessential plug and play player right into the slot. We know the defensive backfield of Washington is not doing well at all. Forbes has been struggling, perhaps maybe in this new scheme, and the addition of a few free agents like Jeremy Chin will help balance that out some more. But now you have a guy that you can stick right in the nickel and is going to take over day one.
Now, with that third second round pick at pick 53, they took tight end Ben Sinnott, Kansas State tight end. He's a solid player, a really good run blocker, pretty athletic guy, had a lot of big plays downfield at Kansas State. I don't dislike the player at all, Alex. I just think there were a lot better players on the board here. And they had other positions that they needed to address, like the offensive line. So once again, I don't really dislike the player. I just dislike where they took him.
Absolutely. And I'll just run down the list. Let's see, Patrick Paul, Marshawn Nealand. You don't have any. You're going to be starting Cleveland Farrell at the edge. Marshawn Nealand, Chris Braswell, Blake Fisher, offensive tackle, Rosengarten out of Washington. You had so many other picks that, to me, this was an unnecessary reach. And if I'm not mistaken, he was probably about maybe the third or even fourth tight end in the draft.
Now, the Commanders finally picked up an offensive lineman at the top of the third round with Brandon Coleman, the offensive tackle from TCU. But by that point in the draft, Alex, they had missed out on so many good tackles. I think Coleman, quite frankly, I'm not sure he's a tackle at the next level. I think they're going to have to move him to guard.
Absolutely, and that's the exact take that I have. He is going to be a guard in this league and going for it, and perhaps that may even work out for them because I don't know in terms of free agency with getting Nick Allegretti there from Kansas City, who was a backup. Perhaps this is just going to be time for him to get in and perhaps take over that job earlier than expected.
Now, in the third round with the 100th pick, they took wide receiver Luke McCaffrey out of Rice. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't catch a whole lot of Rice football games, but you probably recognize the last name. Christian McCaffrey's brother, the son of Ed McCaffrey. So he has the NFL bloodlines. He actually made my list of sleepers to watch out for article. Once again, guys, subscribe to the free newsletter if you haven't already at pintglassfootball.com to get articles like that. Now, look, he's a good player. He makes tough, contested catches look easy. He's a great route runner, just like his dad and brother. His performance at the Senior Bowl really turned heads, and that's when he started climbing draft boards. I have him on my sleeper list because I thought he was going to go in the 4th or 5th round. So even though, once again, I like this player a lot, this might have been a little bit of a reach in the 3rd round.
Yeah, Brad, I'm not a fan of this pick at all. I thought, in terms of just looking at their depth chart, with Jahan Dotson, who's played about 300 snaps in the slot, we know what Scary Terry is. I thought that you could have probably dropped Jahan Dotson perhaps into slot. And how about if you wanted another receiver, how about taking Troy Franklin there as opposed to taking Luke McCaffrey? Troy Franklin, to me, would have been a better fit, especially with the OC that you have, as well as the quarterback that you just drafted. I thought he would have been a better fit and better pick there.
Now, out of the day 3 flyers they took, I do like 7th round pick, the edge player Javonte Jean-Baptiste out of Notre Dame. I got to see him play a few different times last year. Very productive player. 43 quarterback pressures last year, 6 sacks, and 11 quarterback hits last season. I thought if you're going to take a guy late, that was a really nice pickup. Everyone in the sports media, Alex, seems to be giving them an A grade. I had a higher grade on Drake May than Daniels, like we talked about. Newton is a great value for where they got him, but I didn't think it was a position of need, so to speak. Now, you made a good point about the contract situation there. So maybe it's a better pick than I'm giving them credit for. But I think they reached on a couple players. And look, I actually like a lot of the players that they took in this draft. I just didn't like that they waited way too long to address the offensive line, especially after you draft a young quarterback. And then they missed out on, quite frankly, the best tackle class in maybe a decade. So when you just took a quarterback, you need to protect him. I thought that was a pivotal position to address, and I didn't like how long they took to take a guy there. And then on top of that, he's more likely a guard than a tackle. So for me, I'm not as high as the rest of sports media, Alex. This is a B- grade for me.
That's the exact grade that I have, teetering on a C plus, because once you get to that second round pick, the second and 2/3 rounds, really the meat of the draft where you can really, I thought they lost with a lot of value there. You spoke about the tackles they could have drafted, and even still at the top of the 4th round, because of what they did at the bottom of the 3rd round, the second rated tight end was still there in Jatavian Sanders, who I thought would have been a better fit, a guy that can stretch the field a little bit. And again, with the OC you have was a better fit with what you're trying to do. So definitely a B-, teetering on a C plus. Last but not least, the New York Giants. 1st round pick. We know that this team needed a lot of needs. They are specifically on the offensive side. They are void of weapons across the board. There's rumors of Darren Waller perhaps retiring. We know they drafted Jalen Hyatt last year, but because of perhaps poor quarterback play, we haven't seen if he's going to guy. He didn't really flash. But with that first pick, they took Malik Neighbors at the number 6 overall pick. My comp for him and how I feel about him coming to this league, he is Jerry Jeudy. I believe he's going to be more of a slot than a boundary guy, and I think they have a few of those guys on the team. I think Jalen Hyatt can also be interchangeable, so perhaps maybe they're looking at interchanging a few things here, but I'm going to tell you why I don't like the pick. And it's really because of what Atlanta did at number 8. Lets us already know that there was a higher grade on Michael Penix than what people thought. And I thought here, I would have gone after the quarterback and Michael Penix as opposed to going after Malik Neighbors.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting, Alex. I can certainly see the case for that. I think for the Giants, clearly they must think that there's still some ceiling to be reached with Daniel Jones. We know a couple years ago he had a pretty nice season, had that playoff run for them. Last year, had the ACL injury, missed a lot of time, so we didn't really get to see what he could do the following year in Daboll's system. But I do think quarterback was a position that a lot of people were wondering, would they pull the trigger there? I wouldn't have hated that pick by any stretch, but because they decided to stick with Daniel Jones another year, I understand the pick in Malik Neighbors. Really explosive player. This is an offense that just lacks juice, and Neighbors is a guy that instantly gives them a spark on that offense.
That 2nd round pick, Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. This guy is a day 1 starter, would be a plug and play player. He is a ball hawking safety. I don't like what he is against the run, but that'll be okay if you're going to keep him in coverage. He's going to be able to clean up a lot of things that are on that back end, and especially with his size and where he's coming from in Minnesota. I love the pick. I love the fit, especially with what the Giants already did up front with their pass rush. I can see this guy being a potential defensive rookie of the year, because I think there's going to be a lot of balls coming his way that he's going to be able to pick off.
Wow, yeah, rookie of the year. I like it, Alex. Yeah, Tyler Nubin, really, really good player. If you're not looking at Cooper DeJean as a safety, then this guy becomes the number 1 safety in this class. Really good player. Like you said, a borderline round 1 type of player, big time playmaker, 13 career interceptions at Minnesota. So you're absolutely right, Alex. This is a guy that can take it away and make big time game changing plays.
Now, with their 3rd round pick and getting Andrew Phillips, I kind of questioned this move. I thought they could have gone in a few different directions. I thought they were perhaps maybe another offensive weapon if this is the way they wanted to go, in terms of perhaps saying that well, I want to get a cornerback. I didn't think that this pick fit. And the reason I don't think it fit is because he's going to have to be a day one starter. And I don't think he's ready to start in this league. However, if you want to throw him right in the fire and see what he can do, I think he's a guy that can develop into one. I just don't think he is a day one starter that you can put in that lineup. But again, I mentioned what they did up front. So perhaps he'll have an easier go at it than he would if they didn't have the strong front seven that they have right now.
Yeah, Drew Phillips, 70th overall pick. He was a guy that was a late riser. He started climbing draft boards through the draft process, a guy that I think is going to be a natural nickel corner at the next level. He did play that position quite a bit at Kentucky. I don't know if I love the pick, but I understand it. It was a position they needed to address, and he's definitely a pretty good player.
And then with the rest of the draft picks, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, Darius Masu. I actually can see that Theo Johnson plays this guy who can also be an inline blocker as well, and also has a little bit of speed with him. Obviously, I mentioned previously Darren Waller with the rumors of perhaps retiring, and he has some off the field things that are going on that can perhaps tend to show up on the field. So I can understand what they did in the 4th round pick. And I think the other 2 picks, I thought that perhaps, Tyrone Tracy, I get it. They needed another running back. Devin Singletary is more of a 3rd down back. And then that's just depth at that linebacker position. So overall, I'm actually going to give the Giants a C+ again. I really thought they should have gone quarterback in the 1st round, just because of what happened with Michael Penix, not even just my own personal grade on, but what I thought they should have done, and then what happened in the draft, that you probably should have gone Penix here and started your new era with this type of offensive coordinator. I thought he would have been a perfect fit. So they're going to get a C+ from me.
Yeah, I completely understand that grade. I think Malik Neighbors is such a fantastic player, but we had Rome Odunze rated higher, and he obviously was on the board there too. So if you're going to go wide receiver, I don't know why you would go Neighbors over Odunze. I know those grades were very close, and a lot of people like Neighbors more. I don't think it's a bad pick by any means, but I understand your take there at the quarterback position, or maybe using that pick to trade back and get more picks might have been another option for them. Tyler Nubin, we talked about him. That's just a home run all the way. Drew Phillips, solid player at a position in need. Theo Johnson, though, the tight end out of Penn State, he was actually a top 5 tight end in this class for me. Not a great tight end class, but I actually think he's a pretty good selection in the 4th round. So I might be a little higher on this class than you are, because obviously you mentioned Darren Waller. His future is kind of murky here, so that was a need for them. I'm going to go with a B-. I think it's a solid class considering how few picks they had, but I do understand what you're saying with that 1st round selection and maybe a different direction they could have gone. Did you know that Pint Glass Football is more than just this podcast? We have an exclusive newsletter. Sign up for free at pintglassfootball.com to receive articles and insights delivered straight to your inbox. But wait, there's more. We're excited to announce our brand new YouTube channel. Not only can you listen to our podcast on YouTube, but you'll also find exclusive video content waiting for you. So hit the pause button right now and go subscribe to our newsletter, and hit that subscribe button on YouTube to stay connected with the latest football news and our exclusive content. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. I personally love the pick'em game. Just pick between 2 and 5 players to build a pick'em entry. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in this week's game for a chance to win big. You can win up to 20 times your money in a single night. Download the Underdog Fantasy app and sign up today with promo code PGF. That's promo code PGF to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. The official ticketing app of Pint Glass Football is now SeatGeek. I can't recommend them enough, guys. I've been using SeatGeek for years. You want to go to a game this season? SeatGeek is here to take the confusion out of buying tickets, making sure you get the best seats at the best prices. With SeatGeek, you'll never have to worry about overpaying for tickets again. How? They put a 0 to 10 score on each ticket, so you know you're getting a good deal. But here's the real game changer. You can get $20 off your first ticket purchase with the code PGFPOD. That's right, $20 off with code PGFPOD. This season, make every game day epic with SeatGeek. Download the SeatGeek app and remember to enter the code PGFPOD to grab your $20 discount. Alex, like we said earlier, we've got a double header for these draft grades. Let's shift gears to the AFC East. How about the Buffalo Bills? This is a team that I had their biggest needs at wide receiver, safety, and offensive line. Now, Buffalo traded with Kansas City in round 1. They traded out of round 1 completely. The Bills, as we know, they lost Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis this offseason. So going and getting Keon Coleman at pick 33 early in the second round, I think was a really nice move. This is a guy who's a prototypical X-receiver, big, athletic, can win in those contested catch situations. He's a great fit in this offense, and I think he's going to be an impact guy right away.
Well, I can tell you what he's an impact with right away. The media. This guy is a media darling. And in Macy's, if you don't, I know things are rough right now, but if you don't go and give this kid some type of gift card or some type of endorsement, I don't know what you're doing. Because if you haven't realized what this kid is, and hopefully his game develops on the field, I look at him more as I would say he doesn't have the speed of a Dez Bryant, but I think he has the ability to get open in those 50-50 balls that he'll be able to go up and get for a Josh Allen. He's going to work, but I think this kid's character, has a likable character. I've actually watched the entire Bills, first day with Keon Coleman. Hilarious kid. He looks like he loves football. Is going to have a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, it's a good point, Alex. And actually, somebody give this guy a microphone and get him on a podcast, because this is the kind of guy, like you said, needs to have his own show, needs to have his own media platform, YouTube channel, something, because you're right. He is a lot of fun on the microphone. Now, in the second round, at the 60th overall pick, they took safety Cole Bishop out of Utah. Now, Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, when they left, it really left a big hole in that secondary for the Bills. I understand that they really needed to address that position, but this feels like a reach here. Now, Bishop is a smart player. He was really well coached at Utah. He's a versatile player. I think you're going to be able to move him around in a lot of different packages. I think he's an NFL-ready guy, and I think he's got a nice floor, but he's a player that, quite frankly, I didn't have a second-round grade on.
Completely agree with you there. I didn't see it at all. And, also when you go back and you take a look at the draft and see what was available after they picked Cole Bishop with the 20th pick in the second round, with Rakestraw going right behind him, I thought that would have been a better pick, because right now when you look at their depth chart, losing Tre'Davious White, they needed another starting cornerback there. And to your point, they did lose both safeties, but I just thought the cornerback position, especially in the division that you're in with that track meet that is Miami, I thought a cornerback would have been a better decision here.
Now, in the third round, I think they bounced back big time, though. With the 95th pick, they took defensive tackle Dwayne Carter out of Duke. This guy can really get after the quarterback from the interior spot, and he does a nice job of pushing the pocket, collapsing the pocket. 114 pressures combined the last 2 seasons at Duke. He can defend the run as well. He is a very complete football player. I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, love this kid. You get to put him next to Ed Oliver, who is a somewhat proven veteran. He is a good player. You have Greg Rousseau on the outside, and you have Espinoza. And I think a guy like this, because of everybody else around him, is going to be getting all the attention. To the point that you made, he's going to be seeing a lot of one-on-one, and this is a guy that can win his battles in those situations.
Now, in the fourth round at pick 128, they took running back Ray Davis out of Kentucky. This is a versatile running back. He had 7 receiving touchdowns last year. I think he's a guy that's going to be really good on third down and in those passing situations. He'll be an asset for them, but he's a big play guy in the open field, a home run hitter, and I think he's going to add some nice depth to that running back room for the Bills.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a guy that's going to be able to come in, and what they lost in Devin Singletary, Ray Davis is actually going to be able to pick up. So I think that's a great pick. And I know we're not going to talk about undrafted free agents, but I also want to mention they did pick up Frank Gore Jr. as well. So let's see if he could develop into something for the namesake.
In the 5th round, they took linebacker Edafon Olofosio. Hopefully, I didn't butcher that name too bad. Linebacker out of Washington here. Had a nice showing at the combine. Really showed he's an athletic player who moves well and a guy who really climbs some draft boards. Now, I want to mention their 6th round pick here briefly. Cornerback Daquan Hardy out of Penn State. Big time speed, really good agility. This looks like a steal in the 6th round. I'm surprised he fell that far.
Yeah, absolutely. You just heard me mention cornerback early in the draft, but for this guy to be there in the 6th round, you're absolutely right. This is a steal and kind of redeems a little bit what I thought they did earlier, where they should have perhaps gone in the cornerback position. But having a guy like this fall to them with the upside that he has, if they could develop him, is a great steal.
Overall, Alex, this is a really solid draft by the Bills. Now, I didn't love the reach for safety in round 2 that we talked about, but this was a pretty weak safety class. So from that standpoint, I kind of get that they went after a guy maybe a little early because they wanted to solidify that position. My only other knock is that they waited too long, in my opinion, to draft an offensive tackle. But overall, I really like a lot of the guys they took in this class, and I think they found value in those mid and even later rounds. So for me, this is a B-plus draft.
One more player I wanted to mention with Buffalo is Cedric Van Pran from Georgia. The Buffalo Bills were able to get him in the 5th round. This was a position of need to strengthen that offensive line, but I love the value of in the 5th round to get this type of guy who was basically ranked the 3rd overall center in the draft, and to get him in the 5th round, great value. That 7th round did bother me a little bit. I know they took a kid out of England, but we talked about Javante Jean-Baptiste there. And with Von Miller getting up in age and injuries, I thought they could have used another edge rusher that they perhaps missed out on. But I agree with you in a B+. Onto their counterparts who are probably going to be challenging them once again for the top of that division are the Miami Dolphins. Now, with their first pick, I'm just going to do a lap and pat myself on the back because this is someone who I mock to Miami, being that the fact they had the issue with Bradley Chubb, they lost Christian Wilkins. I looked at how I had my mock draft set up, and Chop Robinson was the pick here because they needed another edge rusher. Again, with Bradley Chubb coming off injury, losing Christian Wilkins, they needed a guy to come in. I like Chop Robinson. He's going to be able to play early and often. Now, there are some questions about him, but we're going to see how he gets used in that scheme with the new defensive coordinator there.
Yeah, Alex, victory lap for you. Nailed that pick in your mock draft. Absolutely. This guy has big time upside, put on a show at the combine and really showed that he is an elite athlete. But if you turn on that Penn State tape, there's a lot left to be desired here with Chop Robinson. Anybody that puts up those kind of numbers at the combine, but really lacks production at the college level, is a big, big red flag for me. So I don't love this pick. I understand it. You definitely addressed a position of need, but this is a guy that I think has some serious bust potential.
In the 2nd round, going back and looking at the offensive line, they have Teron Armstead, they have Austin Jackson, but they go and they pick up Patrick Paul, one of the guys, if you remember, we talked about how deep this draft was with offensive linemen. This is a guy that can come in and be a potential starter right away or be an eventual starter. We're looking at Teron Armstead, huge contract, but he's oft injured since they signed him away from the Saints. So this is a guy that can come in that hopefully he can get some training behind between him and between Armstead and Austin Jackson, and eventually be a starter in the future. But I like this pickup because they needed the depth on the offensive line, specifically knowing what they have in the quarterback back there that they need to protect.
Yeah, Patrick Paul, really good player. A guy with some upside, but still has some developing to do. Not sure he's going to be a plug-and-play starter, but to your point, I think down the line, he could potentially replace a guy like Teron Armstead. So like this pick a lot. Good value at pick 55.
Yeah. And you know what? This is where I love the part of the draft is because when you get into this middle part of the draft, which is usually the third through the fifth round, you can get a lot of meat, you can find a lot of gems, and usually 6 and 7 are used for truly developmental players. But with 4, they picked up Jalen Wright. With 5, they picked up Muhammad Kamara. And with 6, they picked up Malik Washington. I ran those offs because I want to talk about them briefly. Jalen Wright, a perfect fit. This was my favorite pick for them in this draft. He runs a 4.38. We know they have Mostert. We know they have A-Chain, but those guys have been oft injured. And now you can have a healthy rotation. We know what San Francisco looked like. This guy fits right in. Muhammad Kamara, Colorado State. Most people don't pretty much know about him, but if most of us who were watching early on to see what Dion and that Colorado team could do, that Colorado State game was exciting, and Muhammad Kamara went off. Five tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 tackles for loss as well. He popped and flashed on that field all over the place, and I think what we saw from him really boosted up where a lot of people may have been missing him. They noticed him now. Malik Washington, he is also a person. They have Jalen Waddle coming up on contract. They kind of don't know what they're going to do with him in that situation, but I think he can fit in multiple sets because him and Waddle can both play the slot as well as the boundary. So I think he's a perfect fit for what Mike McDaniel and that offense likes to do.
Yeah, Alex, I like those picks in the middle of this draft too. Jalen Wright, the number 2 running back on my board, really explosive player, really electric running back, totally fits what they want to do in that offense and is going to add an instant impact and instant depth to the running back room. Now, you guys that have been listening to the podcast, you guys already know Muhammad Kamara, the edge defender out of Colorado State in the 5th round, one of my favorite sleepers in this entire draft. Off the charts production. He tested well. I think this is a steal in the 5th round, and it's at a position that they needed to address, and I think they got a good one in Kamara. Now, Malik Washington, wide receiver out of Virginia, another solid pick, and actually Patrick McMorris, safety out of Cal, and Taj Washington, wide receiver out of USC. With me being out on the West Coast here, I got a little more exposure to these guys. Those are pretty solid flyers late in this draft as well.
So overall, I think I'm going to give them a B plus. Now they're actually a borderline A minus. I know we talked about the issues that perhaps can be Chop Robinson. I think he's a 50-50 guy. I think he could actually be a boom or bust type of player. But what they did in the middle rounds, and I value what gets done, in those middle rounds. So that 2nd through 6th, and you even mentioned the 7th round picks, the 2nd 6th round pick and the first 7th round pick. I'm actually comfortable even if it got pushed up to an A minus, simply because I think they did so well in those middle rounds that they added a lot of depth and a lot of solid players throughout the draft.
Alex, I think I'm with you. Chop Robinson is the only thing holding me back here on my grade because I just don't believe in him, but I'm with you completely. He is a prototypical boom or bust prospect. If he develops into a guy that we think he could be a special player. That's just the question marks about his production at college really have me concerned. But overall, really good draft class by the Miami Dolphins. I think I'm okay with an A minus. I'll put the minus on there just because Chop Robinson is a boomer bust guy, but I understand the pick. So for me, really solid class top to bottom. All right, the New York Jets, Alex, going into this draft, I had their biggest needs circled at wide receiver, offensive tackle, and safety, with an emphasis on wide receiver and offensive tackle. Now, with the first round pick, number 11 overall, they took Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. I think this was a smart move for them for now and for the future for New York. Now, they needed to address the offensive line. I think even after signing a guy like Tyron Smith, he's an older player now. He's been injury prone. You bring in Fashanu. He has some parts of his game that he needs to work on, especially with run blocking. But his pass protection is the best in this entire draft class. You got to be able to keep Aaron Rodgers upright. So this pick to me makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't have a problem with the pick. I have some other off-season things that we'll bring up on another off-season show that I thought they should have done differently, but love the pick, and you're absolutely right. Have to keep Aaron Rodgers upright in order for him to do what you brought him in there to do.
Now, in the 3rd round, with the 65th pick, they took wide receiver Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. He had 29 receiving touchdowns over the past 3 seasons. Big time production, and a guy who is great after the catch, elusive, big time playmaker, great pick in the 3rd round. I think this guy is a day one impact player for this offense.
And an early offensive rookie of the year candidate for me as well. I think with what Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to do with now what he has on the outside and now at the slot position, especially with those running backs and this new reset line, Morgan Moses coming in as well as John Simpson. A lot of time, this kid, as you said, gets open and early often. And when he gets the ball, he turns into a running back. Think Deebo Samuel, just hopefully he can stay a little bit more healthy.
Now, in the 4th round, they took Braylon Allen, the running back out of Wisconsin. And in the 5th round, they took Jordan Travis, the quarterback out of Florida State. Now, look, Allen is a solid running back. He adds some nice depth behind Breece Hall. Jordan Travis, I was surprised he went drafted this high. I don't like this pick considering that Michael Pratt went in the 7th round of this draft, and I had a much higher grade on him than I did Travis. I thought Travis was a guy that, quite frankly, he would be a 7th round pick or maybe even undrafted. I was shocked that they pulled the trigger in the 5th round on him. Now, he did make a lot of big throws at FSU. I'm not saying he's a terrible player, but coming off of that nasty leg injury last year, I just thought this was an interesting pick. And it's going to be interesting also to see if he can develop behind Aaron Rodgers for a year or two. Maybe they find something with him down the road, but I think there was still a lot of good players in this draft, so I didn't love where they went as far as that direction.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, I mean, with that draft pick, I think this team is telling you what they're going to do because this is not a small back. This is not a scat back. This is a big time 6 foot, 235-pound, typical Wisconsin. Think Ron Dane coming out of Wisconsin, and you already have Breece Hall there, so they're going to run early and often. There's going to be a lot of play action set up off of this as well. So I love that. I love that pick because, again, this is a team that is going for it all. A lot of people's jobs on the line with this. Jordan Travis, I understand what you're saying about the Tulane quarterback, but the pick of quarterback here, I guess in the sense of, since we're talking about the Jets, is non-threatening to Aaron Rodgers in a sense. So this is a guy he's not going to have to worry about.
In the 5th round, they go back to the running back position. They take Isaiah Davis out of South Dakota State. I know this is one of your guys, Alex, one of your favorite sleepers in this draft. You highlighted him in some of our episodes before the draft. Really good pick in the 5th round. 151 missed tackles the last 2 seasons combined. Tough runner, gets downhill. This guy is a bulldozer with the ball, and he rarely fumbles.
Yeah. Now, I like the player. I just don't like the pick for them simply because of what they did in the 4th round in Braylon Allen and what they have in Breece Hall. I would have been looking for them to go in a different direction, specifically with the pick that went right after in Kellen Carson. They're kind of really weak when you get past the 2 starting corners. I thought they could have used a little bit more depth, and I thought Kellen Carson would have been a better fit and a better pick there, given that they already had taken Braylon Allen and what they have in Breece Hall. But again, not mad at the player, just kind of, want to go in a different direction with the pick, but love the player.
Yeah, to your point earlier, Alex, when you said they're showing us what they're going to do here, taking 2 physical running backs to add depth at running back room, I think you're right, Alex. I think we're going to see a balanced offense and a team that's going to run on early downs and try to take some of that pressure off of Aaron Rodgers as well. Now, I want to highlight their other 5th round pick, cornerback Quantez Stiggers out of the Canadian Football League. Now, this guy was the Canadian Football League most outstanding rookie last year, and this is a great story, Alex. His mother urged him to try out and then ended up signing with a fan-controlled football league the year prior to that. This is a live streaming indoor American Football League. Quite frankly, Alex, this is a guy who slipped through the cracks but never gave up on his dreams. He kept working hard. Now he has a chance to play in the NFL. Great story here, but I also like his tape. I think this is a guy that can play. I think he's going to make this roster and be an impact player for them.
You know what, Brad? This is something that we talk about consistently about the NFL because they are always looking for players. You have the Arena League. We obviously know what they have in the UFL. And, going on up there with Canadian football, now the fan controlled league. So it lets you know that scouts are everywhere. Just simply keep putting up enough that can go on tape and circulate.
Alex, I think this was overall a really nice draft by GM Joe Douglas. I think he addressed some key needs for this team. I think he found some good players throughout this draft. B plus grade for me.
Yeah, I have to say, and I actually would have given them an A, specifically talking about the one pick in the fifth round. Had they gone cornerback there with Kellen Carson, I would have had to give them an A minus. But again, great draft, putting together a team that's going to help out everybody on the field, specifically that defense, running that clock down because we know what they're going to do with that running game when they get a lead. Last but certainly not least, unfortunately, they had a bad season, are the New England Patriots coming into this year with an entire new regime. And by their draft picks, you can tell they had intention in going in a completely different direction from what they have done in the past 20 to 25 years with the Bill Belichick regime. First off, number 3 overall pick, Drake May. Now, I have been a person talking about Drake May, not in the most positive light in terms of what I've seen on tape, specifically what I've seen in the big games, but this is more about fit. And I think Drake May fits the new direction of where the Patriots are going. So although I may not have liked the player in the tape, I like the fit, and I think he fits the new direction of where they're going. We know he can make all the throws. He's the protocol. He's probably the only true quarterback that was picked in the first round, with the exception of Michael Penix. That's a prototypical quarterback with the height, weight, and so on and so forth. Can make every single throw, can go downfield. He just needs to get a little bit quicker, which most quarterbacks do when they get to league, going through progressions, but making tighter throws as the windows in the NFL gets much smaller than what they were in college.
Yeah, hard to knock this pick. He was the number 2 quarterback on my board. I think he's got tremendous upside. You hit on it. He's got to clean some stuff up in his game. But when you talk about the size, the arm talent, the athletic ability, this guy checks a lot of boxes. If they're patient with him and they build a good enough team around him, I think he could develop into a special player.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, this is not your Bill Belichick New England Patriots. They come back into the second round and they get Jalen Polk out of Washington, one of Penix's big targets out there. This team has been void of getting skilled players for a very long time, and they have not gone after them early. And when they have gone, unfortunately, those players have not been the right pick. But Jalen Polk, a player that fits, he's a multiple receiver. What I mean by that, you can put him in the slot or you could put him in the boundary. They also have Kendrick Bourne there and DeMario, who was, kind of an exciting player in preseason, but it didn't show up on the field during the season. But I think they can get multiple with what they can do with these 3 receivers now. And it's a lot he's actually sure-handed. That's a key thing in the cold New England weather. He's coming from Washington, so he knows how to play in that weather. I like this pick. I like this pick a lot. And at 6'1", 203 pounds, I think he's going to fit nicely into this new look New England Patriots.
Alex, I love what they did here. After you go and get May, they needed obviously quarterback, they needed wide receivers, they needed help on the offensive line. You go and get your young quarterback and you immediately go and get him some weapons. So I love what they did here. Jalen Polk. We had 3 NFL draft analysts on this show talking about some of their favorite players in this draft. All 3 of them mentioned Jalen Polk. This guy has big time production, big time potential at the next level. Love that pick. And then Javon Baker, a guy that I didn't think would fall into the 4th round. I had a 3rd round grade on Baker. This guy is a big time home run hitter, a productive player in college. These were tremendous picks to go help your young quarterback.
Absolutely. And I'm going to talk about Caden Wallace, a day 1 starter. He's going to be fitting right into that tackle line. I like the pick of Leighton Robinson, but you hit on it. Javon Baker. I love this 4th round pick of this player. Another guy that can get multiple, that can play in the slot. And he's a little bit unknown, obviously, because most people aren't watching UCF. But let's talk about Javon Baker for a moment. Another player that probably should have been on our sleeper list that they got in the 4th round. This is a guy that against number 16 OK State caught 4 balls for 112 yards, and then against number 6 Oklahoma, 5 catches, 134 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that's the type of thing you want to see from a player when you get him in the 4th round, what he does in the big games. And he's more of a mid-major school in terms of going against the big guys in Oklahoma. And this guy put up numbers, and he was solid all the way through the season. Great pick, great 4th round pick by the Patriots there. I guess there's not too much to say about the rest of it. Marcel Dial in South Carolina. South Carolina SEC school. It's a 6th round pick, so I think he could perhaps develop into something, maybe, your 4th or 5th defensive back. But the pick that we just need to simply mention here is Joe Milton at Tennessee. Now, I've searched to see what they have said about him. Given his size at 6'5", 235 pounds, he can be converted into a stretch tight end, but we know what that arm is. So I'm waiting to see what he develops into. So he's just an interesting player to watch and see how he gets used in this new look Patriots offense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think going back a little bit here first, offensive tackle Caden Wallace, I thought they might have reached for him a little bit, but there was a run on tackles going on, and I think it kind of forced their hand to go and get a guy before they were all gone. Good player, just might have gone a little early. Joe Milton, absolutely fascinating player because he has a cannon for an arm. Huge arm talent. Really struggled with accuracy. Even layups and what you consider easy throws, we've seen him struggle with. So, big time developmental guy for sure. Has a lot of traits. That's certainly the case for him. A big time athlete. And because of that, and like you mentioned with this size, I would not be surprised if they tried to move him to possibly a tight end. But with that being said, taking him late in the draft, you can give him time to develop in the background as a backup quarterback. If it doesn't work, maybe you convince him to try another position. So I really don't dislike that pick at all. Jaheim Bell, the tight end they did take, was really good in yards after the catch, a productive player. So I think all in all, this is a pretty solid draft. What's your grade for the Patriots, Alex?
I may surprise a few people here, but I'm going to give them an A. And the reason I'm going to give them an A, they did not go defense until the 6th round. They finally simply said, we're going to dedicate the top end of our draft, or basically most, or at least 75% of this draft, completely towards the offense, and say that we're going to help our new quarterback in this new system succeed as best as possible, specifically with the Polk and Baker pick at wide receiver, as well as the offensive line picks. Protect them, give them weapons, and let's see what happens. So I'm going to give them an A because they're going in a different direction, and I like the picks that they made early, especially in the middle round of that draft.
You know what? I don't have a problem with it, Alex. It might have been a little higher than I was originally thinking. But yeah, getting Drake May, the second best quarterback in my opinion at 3, falls in your lap, so that's a great pick. Jalen Polk, love that pick. And Javon Baker, like you mentioned, getting him weapons right away in this draft and getting the value with Baker in the 4th, addressing the offensive line in the 3rd and 4th round. That's absolutely how you want to do it. And then you go and get a tight end, a flyer in Jaheim Bell later in the draft too. So a lot of offense, which is what they needed. So from that standpoint, Alex, you're right. They hit it out of the park. If you enjoy the podcast, do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. We've got another episode later this week with 2 more divisions, draft grades, and some exclusive YouTube coverage as well. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.
You know what's important when you're having a good time? Staying hydrated. And that's where Liquid IV comes in, the category-winning hydration brand that's fueling your well-being. With just one stick of Liquid IV, you get 2 times faster hydration than water alone, plus 5 essential vitamins to keep you feeling your best. And let's not forget about the convenience factor. The packaging is perfect for on the go, whether you're tailgating or just hanging out on the couch. But what really sets Liquid IV apart is the amazing flavors. Personally, I'm all about the Concord grape and lemon lime. And with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks, Liquid IV is made with premium ingredients to give you the hydration and nourishment you need. Get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code PGFP at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PGFP at liquidiv.com. Zencastr is the ultimate web-based podcasting solution. It provides high-quality audio and video podcast production and hosting. With a full suite of professional tools, podcasters can seamlessly record, produce, and publish studio-quality content all from one dashboard. Zencastr's post-production process takes the headache out of audio production. Set the right podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with a click of a button. Coordinating all your guests to record in person is painful and tedious. Easily invite up to 11 participants per recording with one click. Go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code PGFP and you'll get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr Professional. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.